I woke up to the sound of metal breaking. 3:42 a.m. A time that would be burned into my memory forever. Through my bedroom window, I saw 3 dark figures standing in my backyard. They weren't trying to hide. They were just there, waiting. My name is Jake Thompson. I'm 29 years old and I live alone in my late father's house in Pine Valley Estates. It's a quiet neighborhood where everyone minds their own business. Or at least that's what I thought. The woman leading this midnight invasion was Lisa Crawford. She's been our HOA president for 2 years. Always dressed in expensive suits, always with that fake smile. Always getting what she wants. But tonight was different. Tonight she had crossed a line that would change everything. Before you watch complete story, comment down from which country are you watching and what are you doing right now. Let me back up a few weeks. My relationship with the HOA used to be normal. I paid my fees on time. I kept my grass cut. I followed the rules about paint colors and mailbox designs. Lisa would do her monthly walkthroughs, checking everyone's property. She always seemed friendly enough. "Great job on the lawn, Jake," she'd say with that bright smile. Everything changed when she announced the Pine Valley Improvement Project. The plan was simple, she said. Build a new community center. Cost, $150,000. Every homeowner would pay a special assessment of $3,000. But here's the catch. They needed to use parts of our yards as temporary storage for construction materials. For 6 months. When Lisa knocked on my door with her clipboard and that same fake smile, I knew what was coming. "Jake, honey," she said, "we'd like to use your backyard as the main storage area. It's the perfect size and it's centrally located." I looked at my backyard. My dad had spent years building raised garden beds, planting fruit trees, creating a small paradise. It was all I had left of him. "I'm sorry, Lisa," I said politely. "I can't let you tear up my dad's garden. Maybe we can find another solution?" That's when I saw it. Just for a second her mask slipped. Her eyes went cold. Her smile became tight and forced. "Of course, Jake," she said, her voice different now. "We'll figure something else out." But I could tell she wasn't happy. Not at all. The first notice came 3 days later. A $200 fine for excessive grass height. I went outside with a ruler. My grass was 2.3 inches tall. The HOA rules said maximum height was 2.5 inches. I was clearly within the rules. I called Lisa immediately. "This has to be a mistake," I said, keeping my voice calm. "My grass is within the regulations." "Oh, Jake," she said sweetly. "We updated the regulations last week. Maximum height is now 2 inches. Didn't you get the notice?" I checked my mail. My email. Nothing. "Where was this notice sent?" I asked. "Last Tuesday," she replied coldly. "You need to pay the fine and cut your grass immediately." I spent the next day cutting my grass down to exactly 1.8 inches. It looked ridiculous, like a golf course. But I figured this would end the harassment. 2 days later, another notice arrived. This time, a $150 fine for cutting grass too short and creating an eyesore. I stared at the notice in disbelief. They were playing games with me. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 7 more violations. And my mailbox was the wrong shade of black. And my garden hose was improperly stored. And my car was parked too close to the property line. And my outdoor light was too bright for neighborhood standards. My fence needed immediate pressure washing. Each violation came with a fine between $100 and $300. Each time I fixed the problem, they found something new. I started keeping detailed records. Photos, measurements, timestamps. Something wasn't right here. That's when I decided to dig deeper into the HOA rules. What I found shocked me. I requested a copy of the official HOA charter and all recent rule changes. According to state law, any rule changes had to be voted on by the board and announced to residents 30 days in advance. Lisa had been making up rules as she went along. In the past 2 months, she had changed over 15 regulations. None of them had been properly voted on. None of them had been announced to residents. She was operating like a dictator, making up rules to target me specifically. But when I tried to explain this to my neighbors, they looked at me like I was crazy. Lisa's next move was brilliant and evil at the same time. She started spreading rumors about me throughout the neighborhood. She never directly said anything bad. She was too smart for that. Instead, she planted seeds of doubt. "I'm so worried about Jake," she told Mrs. Rodriguez at the mailboxes. "He seems so angry lately. I hope he's not having problems. Jake has been making some concerning phone calls to board members," she mentioned to Mr. Peterson during their morning walks. "I'm starting to feel unsafe." Within a week, everything changed. Neighbors who used to wave at me started crossing the street. Mrs. Rodriguez, who used to chat about her roses, suddenly found reasons to go inside when she saw me. Mr. Peterson, a retired cop who used to give me advice about home security, started avoiding me completely. Lisa had turned my own neighbors against me without them even realizing it. One morning, I woke up to find the word, "selfish," spray painted across my fence in bright red letters. My security camera had caught footage of a white SUV driving slowly past my house around 2:30 a.m. The license plate was partially visible, and it looked like Lisa's car. When I called the police, Officer Davis came out to take a report. But before he arrived, Lisa appeared at my door. "Oh my goodness, Jake," she said, perfectly dressed despite the early hour. "I just heard about the vandalism. This is terrible." For someone who had supposedly just heard about overnight vandalism, she looked remarkably put together. Full makeup, styled hair, pressed clothes. When Officer Davis arrived, Lisa was ready with her performance. "I think someone might be trying to frame me," she told him, tears in her eyes. "Jake has been making accusations about me lately. I'm worried he might have done this himself to make me look bad." Officer Davis looked between us. A well-dressed, articulate HOA president versus a guy in pajamas claiming conspiracy. It wasn't hard to guess who he found more credible. 2 weeks later, Lisa announced a mandatory community meeting to discuss the improvement project. She rented the community center and sent formal invitations to every household. Everyone except me. I only found out about it when Mrs. Rodriguez mentioned it awkwardly. "You're going to the meeting tonight, right?" she asked, then looked confused when I had no idea what she was talking about. I showed up anyway. Lisa had clearly prepared for this moment. She stood at a podium wearing a perfectly tailored blazer, her blonde hair styled in waves, speaking into a wireless microphone. "Friends and neighbors," she began, "we're here to discuss a crisis facing our community." She gestured to a large poster board showing architectural drawings of the proposed community center. "Our $150,000 community improvement project, which would benefit every family in Pine Valley, is being blocked by one person's selfishness." Her eyes found mine in the crowd of about 35 people. "Jake Thompson has not only refused to cooperate, he has actively worked to undermine our community's progress." Everyone turned to stare at me. I felt my face burning as whispers started around the room. "Not only has he violated multiple HOA regulations," Lisa continued, "but he has made threatening phone calls to board members." I stood up. "I never threatened anyone," I said, my voice cracking slightly. Lisa smiled sympathetically, like a teacher dealing with a difficult student. "Jake, I understand you're upset, but we have documentation." She held up her phone. "Would you like me to play the recording where you told me I would regret this decision?" Those had been my exact words. But the full context was, "You'll regret this decision if you keep making up fake violations to harass residents." Standing there, out of context, it sounded threatening and ominous. The meeting ended with a formal vote. 32 residents voted that I should cooperate with community decisions or consider relocating to a neighborhood better suited to his antisocial behavior. 3 people didn't vote. No one voted in my favor. As people filed out, I heard fragments of conversation. "Always seemed weird to me. Lives alone, keeps to himself. I heard he's been having money problems." Lisa had executed a perfect character assassination, and I had walked right into her trap. The next escalation came via certified mail. A thick envelope from Crawford Legal Services, containing an official-looking document with legal letterhead. "Final notice of legal action," it read in bold letters. "Mr. Jake Thompson is hereby notified that failure to comply with lawful HOA directives within 48 hours will result in immediate legal action for obstruction of community development, harassment of HOA officials, and damages totaling $75,000. The letter cited specific legal codes and threatened seizure of my property. It looked professional, intimidating, and completely legitimate. But something felt off about it. I decided to research Crawford Legal Services. The address led to a UPS store mailbox. The phone number went to a generic voicemail. When I dug deeper, I discovered the law firm had been registered just 3 weeks earlier. The listed attorney was Michael Crawford, who shared an address with Lisa. A quick background check revealed that Michael had been sanctioned by the state bar for unauthorized practice of law. Lisa wasn't just harassing me. She was running an elaborate fraud with someone who was probably her brother or boyfriend. But why go to such extreme lengths over a backyard? What was really going on here? Then came that night that changed everything. 3:42 a.m. Violent pounding on my door. Through the peephole, I saw Lisa flanked by two men. One was Michael, whom I recognized from his online photos. The other was a large man in work clothes holding what looked like bolt cutters. "Jake Thompson," Lisa shouted. "Open this door immediately. We are here under authority of HOA emergency provisions to access our warehouse." "Warehouse? What are you talking about?" I called back through the door. "Your backyard is now designated as HOA warehouse number 3, Lisa announced loudly. "We demand entry to our property." "You have no legal authority to enter my property," I called back. "Leave now or I'm calling the police." "You can call whoever you want," Lisa replied confidently. "Officer Davis is fully aware of this operation. We have a court order. This is their warehouse now, not your yard." I heard the distinctive sound of bolt cutters snapping through metal. They were cutting my fence. "Stop right there," I yelled, grabbing my phone to call 911. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," Michael called out. "We've got documentation showing this property has been legally reclassified as HOA warehouse number 3. You're now trespassing on community property." As I waited for the police, I watched through my window as the three of them began measuring my backyard and taking photographs. Lisa was directing the operation like a military commander, pointing to different areas and making notes on a clipboard. When Officer Davis arrived 25 minutes later, Lisa was ready with a folder full of documents. "Thank you for coming, officer," she said calmly. "As you can see, we're simply conducting the property assessment we discussed." "Discussed?" I interrupted. "When did you discuss this?" Officer Davis looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I don't recall any conversation about property assessment." Lisa's smile never wavered. "Oh, I think there might be some confusion. I spoke with Sergeant Williams about the community improvement project. Perhaps the message didn't get passed along properly." She handed Officer Davis an official-looking document. "This is our HOA emergency action authorization. Mr. Thompson has been preventing essential community improvements, and the board voted to exercise our authority under the community covenants." I watched Officer Davis scan the document. It looked legitimate, full of legal language and official stamps. What he couldn't know was that the emergency provisions Lisa cited didn't actually exist in our HOA charter. "Sir," Officer Davis turned to me, "do you have a copy of your HOA agreement?" I did, but it was buried somewhere in my filing cabinet. I couldn't produce it immediately, which made me look unprepared and dishonest. "This is insane," I protested. "They're trying to steal my property." But standing there in my bathrobe at 4 o'clock in the morning, arguing with three people who had legal-looking documents and professional appearances, I sounded exactly like what Lisa wanted me to sound like, unhinged. After Officer Davis left, Lisa walked up to my door one final time. "Jake," she said sweetly, "this can all end very simply. Sign over temporary use rights to your backyard, and this unpleasantness stops immediately." "Never," I replied. That's when her mask slipped completely. "Then you have no idea what you're dealing with," she said, her voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "I've destroyed bigger obstacles than you, and I always get what I want." The next morning, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of giving up, I was going to fight back with everything I had. I took a personal day from my job at the insurance company and drove to the county courthouse. If Lisa was running a scam, there would be public records to prove it. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Lisa Crawford used to be Lisa Stevens. She had been sued by the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association for embezzling $50,000. She had quietly settled that case and moved to our community, assuming a new identity. Her property management credentials were forged. Her brother Michael had 2 prior convictions for financial fraud spanning the last decade. But the most shocking discovery was about the community improvement project itself. Crawford Construction Company, which was supposed to build our community center, existed only on paper. It had no equipment, no employees, no construction history. The $150,000 residents were contributing wasn't going toward any building. It was being funneled into a network of shell companies that eventually led back to Lisa and Michael's personal accounts. Armed with this evidence, I decided to approach my neighbors again. But this time I would be more strategic. Mrs. Chin seemed like the best choice. She was an accountant and would understand financial irregularities better than most. I waited until I saw her checking her mail, then approached casually. "Mrs. Chin, could I talk to you privately for a few minutes? I've discovered something about the HOA finances that I think you should see." She looked nervous but agreed to listen. When I showed her the evidence of fake companies and embezzled funds, her expression changed completely. "Oh my God," she whispered. Jake, this is serious fraud. We need to call the police immediately. I tried that already. They think I'm just a troublemaker. I need more evidence and I need witnesses who are credible. Mrs. Chin thought for a moment. Let me review the HOA books myself. As a CPA, I can spot financial irregularities that others might miss. If what you're saying is true, there will be more evidence in the accounting records. 3 days later, Mrs. Chin knocked on my door with a USB drive and a very serious expression. Jake, you were right. But it's much worse than you thought. She had found evidence of systematic embezzlement going back 18 months. Fake invoices, inflated expenses, emergency assessments that never went toward emergencies. She's stolen over $80,000 from this community, Mrs. Chin said. And the construction project is completely fake. There's no legitimate company, no permits, no real plans. Why didn't you notice this before? I asked. Because I wasn't looking for it, she admitted. Lisa always presented everything as routine expenses. She's very good at making fraud look legitimate. We decided to approach Mr. Peterson next. As a retired police officer, he would know how to handle this properly. When I showed him the evidence, his training kicked in immediately. This is organized fraud, he said grimly. We're not dealing with a simple HOA dispute. This is a criminal enterprise. He agreed to help us gather more evidence and contact his former colleagues in the fraud division. With Mrs. Chin and Mr. Peterson as allies, we developed a plan to expose Lisa publicly. We would call for a special HOA meeting and present all our evidence to the entire community at once. But first, we needed to make sure Lisa couldn't destroy any remaining evidence or flee. Mr. Peterson contacted Detective Martinez at the fraud division. After reviewing our evidence, she agreed to open an official investigation. We need to catch her in the act, Detective Martinez explained. If she realizes we're onto her, she might destroy records or disappear. Can you get her to admit to the fraud on record? That's when I came up with the idea for a fake surrender. I called Lisa and asked for a private meeting. I want to end this fight, I told her. Maybe we can work something out. She agreed to meet at my house the next evening, clearly thinking she had finally broken me. What she didn't know was that Mr. Peterson had helped me set up professional recording equipment throughout my living room. Every word would be captured in high definition. Lisa arrived exactly on time, wearing another expensive outfit and carrying her ever-present clipboard. Jake, I'm so glad you've come to your senses, she said, settling into my couch. This whole situation has been so unpleasant for everyone. I want to understand exactly what I'm agreeing to, I said carefully. Can you walk me through how the construction project will work? Lisa launched into a detailed explanation of the fake project, describing timelines, costs, and procedures that didn't exist. She was so confident in her victory that she didn't bother being careful with her words. And the $150,000 will be managed by Crawford Construction? I asked. That's right. My brother Michael runs a very reputable company. They've handled dozens of community projects. Your brother? Well, yes. But that's not a conflict of interest or anything. He's completely qualified. She was confessing to everything on camera. What about the emergency provisions you used to enter my property? I pressed. Lisa smiled proudly. Oh, those don't actually exist in the HOA charter. But most people don't bother reading the fine print. A few official-looking documents are usually enough to convince everyone. She was admitting to fraud, trespassing, and illegal impersonation of authority. All on camera. Lisa, I said, standing up slowly, I need to tell you something. What's that, Jake? I'm not actually surrendering. This entire conversation has been recorded. Detective Martinez from the fraud division is on her way here with an arrest warrant. Lisa's face went completely white. That's impossible. You're just a troublemaker. You're nobody. You're right about one thing, I said. I'm nobody special. I'm just an insurance adjuster who got tired of being bullied. But here's what you didn't count on. Sometimes regular people fight back. And sometimes they win. Right on cue, Detective Martinez knocked on the door, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. Lisa Crawford, you are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit theft, Detective Martinez announced as she entered my living room. As the handcuffs clicked into place, Lisa's composure finally cracked completely. This isn't over, she screamed. You have no idea who you're dealing with. My connections will destroy you. Ma'am, Detective Martinez said calmly, you have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Michael was arrested at the same time at their shared residence. The fake construction company was shut down, and all financial accounts were frozen. The next evening, we held an emergency community meeting to explain what had happened. Every resident in Pine Valley Estates attended. When I stood up to address the room, I expected to see doubt or suspicion in their faces. Instead, I saw guilt and embarrassment. "I owe you an apology," Mrs. Rodriguez said, standing up. "We should have listened to you instead of believing her lies." "We all owe you an apology," Mr. Peterson added. Lisa was very convincing, but that's no excuse for turning our backs on a neighbor. One by one, my neighbors stood up to apologize and thank me for exposing the fraud. It was overwhelming and humbling at the same time. Over the next few months, the FBI investigation expanded. Lisa and Michael were part of a multi-state fraud operation that had targeted dozens of communities across the country. Thanks to seized assets and recovered funds, every resident of Pine Valley Estates was fully reimbursed for their community improvement contributions. The fake fines I had been charged were canceled, and I received a formal apology from the county. More importantly, our community was transformed. The experience had brought us together in a way that normal neighborhood life never could. We elected a new HOA board with term limits and transparency requirements. All meetings were recorded and shared with residents. All financial records were reviewed monthly by an independent accountant. But the biggest change was cultural. Neighbors started talking to each other again. We organized block parties, started a community garden, and created a phone tree for emergencies. My father's garden, which had started this whole nightmare, became a symbol of our community's resilience. With the fake construction project canceled, I was able to restore the damaged areas and even expand it. Mrs. Chin donated some of her prize-winning roses. Mr. Peterson built raised beds for vegetables. Mrs. Rodriguez contributed herbs from her family's traditional Mexican recipes. What had been a private memorial to my father became a community space where neighbors gathered, children played, and friendships grew. Looking back on this experience, I learned several important lessons. First, bullies count on their victims being isolated. Lisa's strategy was to turn my neighbors against me so I would have no allies. Once I found people willing to stand with me, her power disappeared. Second, documentation is everything. Without the financial records Mrs. Chen found and the recordings Mr. Peterson helped me make, Lisa might have gotten away with her fraud. Third, sometimes doing the right thing means taking risks. It would have been easier to give up my backyard and avoid the conflict. But standing up to corruption benefited everyone in the community. Most importantly, I learned that ordinary people have more power than they realize. I'm not a lawyer or a detective or a politician. I'm just an insurance adjuster who refused to be intimidated. But that was enough. 2 years later, I'm still living in my father's house. Lisa is serving a 7-year federal sentence for fraud. Michael got 5 years. Their criminal network was dismantled, and dozens of other communities were helped by the investigation. Pine Valley Estates has become a model for HOA transparency and community cooperation. We've had no serious conflicts since Lisa's arrest, and property values have actually increased due to our strong community bonds. I still work at the insurance company, but I've also become an unofficial advisor to other communities dealing with HOA problems. My experience has been featured in local newspapers and HOA reform websites. But the most rewarding part is simply being a good neighbor. Mrs. Chin brings me vegetables from the community garden. Mr. Peterson and I watch football games together. Mrs. Rodriguez teaches me Spanish while I help her with insurance paperwork. These are the relationships that Lisa tried to destroy with her lies and manipulation. Instead, her actions brought us closer together than we ever would have been otherwise. If you're dealing with an abusive HOA or neighborhood bully, remember this: you have more power than you think. Document everything. Find allies. Don't be afraid to ask for help from authorities when laws are being broken. Most importantly, don't give up. Sometimes the person who seems most powerful is actually the most vulnerable. Lisa seemed untouchable with her expensive clothes, official documents, and confident demeanor. But it was all a facade. Underneath the professional appearance was a common criminal who counted on people being too intimidated to fight back. When regular people stand together and refuse to be bullied, justice has a way of winning in the end. That's the lesson of my 3:42 a.m. wake-up call. It wasn't just about protecting my father's garden. It was about protecting our community from people who would exploit and abuse their neighbors for personal gain. And in the end, the community won.